We're going to talk about why thyroid hormone is basically the most important hormone in your body. And there's 3 steps to optimizing your thyroid. The first thing we have to do, everyone's different with this too. Number 1, we have to identify things that are destroying thyroid tissue. And we'll talk about that in this video, along with gut health and how you can test for this, because it's a pretty big deal, as you'll see. And the second video, we have to get rid of the thyroid disruptors. So when you get rid of the thyroid destroyers and the disruptors, that's when you can, number 3, optimize thyroid hormone. Because if you start here, it ain't going to work. It will not work until we fix thyroid destroyers and thyroid disruptors. So let's just talk about it. Now, number 1, the biggest problem that we see testing hundreds and hundreds of people here, you got mainstream medicine and then you got functional medicine, and they're completely different. Now, mainstream medicine there, they'll only check one lab generally, which is called THS. And here's problem, hang on, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone there. They'll only check thyroid stimulating hormone, or maybe T4, which isn't anywhere close to what you should be checking. And if they do check it, they'll tell you that if you're between 0.5 and 5.5, you're good, but that's not even close to being optimal at all. We need to get it between 1.8 and 3. So thyroid hormone works in a butter zone, not too high and not too low. And when you get through all of this, you will be in the butter zone and it will just stay there. And that's the point. But we've must fix the destroyers and the disruptors. And that's what this video, well, these 2 videos are all about. So basically, they never check for what's called thyroid antibodies, and that's causing thyroid tissue destruction and also thyroid cancer for that matter. And that's the big problem that you'll see. So we have to do better. Now, here's just one aspect of it, and there's many more things that thyroid hormone does. But if you've got disruptions in your thyroid hormone, you've got dyslipidemia, so your cholesterol's too high and your good HDL cholesterol's too high, your trigs are too high. That thickens up the arteries, causes high blood pressure. And this is what shows up when they'll blame red meat and cholesterol, right? And why don't they check thyroid hormone? Because thyroid hormone will optimize your lipids, your cholesterol, your good cholesterol, all of those things. So I don't understand why they don't do a comprehensive lab. And that brings me to this slide, my friends. So basically, they'll test thyroid stimulating hormone and maybe, if you're lucky, T4, which isn't nowhere near enough. We need to test 9 of them. So think about it like this. If this was a math class and we were using fractions to represent blood work we were running, a full thyroid panel would yield 9 out of 9, 100% of the information that we need to properly diagnose what's wrong with the thyroid hormone. And that translates to 6 functional thyroid patterns or 22 metabolic thyroid patterns. And once we understand that, we can fix your thyroid hormone. But the medical system as it stands, that you get about 11% of the information, you've got no clue what's going on. So that's what we have to really take home and fix. And I'll show you how to do that today. Now, I'm going to play a video for you to show you how key thyroid hormone is for everything. This video is from Kevin Tokoff, who's got a master's in science. So pay careful attention to this. It's powerful.
Is to get the blood loaded with adequate nutrients. And so what we're going to see is that thyroid hormones are going to have effects on multiple tissue types to get the blood loaded with those nutrients. And in fact, it's going to be pretty much the same as what we saw for growth hormone, adipose tissue and the liver. Let's look at adipose tissue first. So thyroid hormone is going to exert its effects on the adipose tissue, which is fat tissue, body fat. And body fat is, of course, loaded with triglycerides, which are the storage form of fatty acids. So thyroid hormones are going to cause lipolysis to increase in adipose tissue. It's on these tissues, very similar to what we actually saw in growth hormone. One of them is increased glucose uptake. So if we're loading up the blood with glucose, it doesn't do us any good if these tissues don't have super efficient glucose uptake. So thyroid hormones will also stimulate glucose uptake by these cells, and the way that it does that is by increasing the amount of glucose transporters in their membranes. So more glucose transporters allows them to import more glucose in, and they can use that glucose to make ATP. So remember that, more ATP to do work. And so some of that work could be protein synthesis, but we can't make proteins without amino acids. So thyroid hormones will also stimulate amino acid uptake. So if you have more thyroid hormone, you have more amino acid uptake by these cells. And this is most pronounced in skeletal muscle, which requires a lot of protein synthesis. So the ATP from metabolism compounded with the increased amino acid uptake gives you increased protein synthesis. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. A couple other things about thyroid hormones. One, they also increase the overall metabolic rate. So what does that mean? Well, metabolism is just pathways. It's a bunch of enzymes that are catalyzing reactions. For example, if we're looking at the degradation of glucose into pyruvate, which is glycolysis, that's a series of 10 enzymes. And when we look at the rate of metabolism, that depends on how many of those enzymes we have. So this is a very abstract way of looking at it, but let's suppose out of glycolysis we have 1,000 enzymes. Okay, we have 1,000 molecules of the enzymes in glycolysis. Well, if we add some thyroid hormone, maybe instead of 1,000 we go up to 10,000. Okay, we have 10 times the number of enzymes. Therefore, we can break down 10 times the number of glucose molecules into pyruvate. So kind of a simplistic way of looking at it, but that's essentially what thyroid hormone does, is it increases the amount of the enzymes we have, and that allows us to metabolize faster because we have more of them. It's kind of like if you had a bunch of workers who are building a house. You're going to be able to build the house faster if you have more workers, right? Makes intuitive sense, hopefully.
So now you can appreciate why it's basically the most important hormone in your body. So it's going to have effects on the brain. You're going to build muscle faster, drop body fat faster. It's also going to keep you having healthy cholesterol. It's doing so many different things, boost testosterone, all of these things. So let's quickly look at how it boosts testosterone. So this is a Leydig cell inside your testes. And the biggest effect that it has is the active form T3 comes in and it increases the receptors, the transporters for LH, which is the precursor. Some more transporters, LH. It rushes in and says, dude, let's make some testosterone. But we're not done yet because it increases mRNA, so gene transcription levels of steroidogenic enzymes to make testosterone. Now, let's have a look at where these enzymes are. Do you see where they are? Look, they're absolutely everywhere. I'll just keep circling them. They're absolutely everywhere. And also, which is critical to understand, we've got to get it in the butter zone, remember? Not too high, not too low in the butter zone there, and you'll have optimal everything. And as Kevin said there, what kind of house do you want to build? You know, if you like houses, you don't want to build this one. You want to build this one. And if you like the V8 muscle car, you want a supercharger on that son of a bitch instead of the four-cylinder driving Miss Daisy car, as you can now appreciate. But, you know, the consequences are there, neurological issues, depression, autism, Alzheimer's, cognitive decline. And look at this research paper right here, June 22. Relationship between thyroid hormones, central nervous system, metabolism in psychological, so stress, mental stress, and pathological conditions, disease. So we have to get this in the butter zone. Interesting thing about thyroid hormone is that you make the bulk of it, called T4, about 93% comes out of the thyroid as T4, and we have to convert it from T4, which is like crude oil, to the active form, which is T3. 60% in the liver, 20 in the gut, and 20 in the rest of your body there. Now, the brain here, T4 goes into the astrocytes. So the astrocytes are a type of neuroglia cell, and it converts it into T3 there. So T4 to T3. Then it goes into the neurogenesis for learning. You've got synaptogenesis, so a fast, sharp brain, and myelination. So it is doing so much. It's triggering all that from happening. So if you've got disruptions in your thyroid hormone, you're going to have psychological stress and pathological conditions and disease states. So I think we can now understand how important thyroid hormone is. So, what we're going to move into now is food intolerance, both DNA and immune intolerances, but also heavy metals, and finally finish on gut health. So, let's have a look. So, we've tested hundreds and hundreds of people now through genetic testing, and there's a lot of things that can destroy your thyroid hormone there. And lectins are one, gluten's another one, nightshades are another one. So there's a lot of things that can attack the thyroid hormone. And we're seeing a 65% have a sensitivity to lectins. Now, this is in foods. So I'll play this video for you. This is from my good friend, Dr. J. So pay careful attention to this one, my friends.
The lectin is the big one. That's a 4-fold higher risk of heart disease, even as a plus minus, the SELE.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So lectins are going to trigger a lot of damage to the arteries and damage to the gut. I would recommend avoiding grains.
Yeah.
You know, grains are the major source of lectins.
Yeah.
And his gut's very sensitive to grains also with the gluten. And he's got a thyroid gene that comes up later with gluten as well. So I would say just take off the grains, you know.
And we're told to eat healthy grains. And for a lot of people, it's not. Now, while it is true, some people have a high sensitivity and they should always avoid them. And some people do have a low sensitivity. However, you have to have a healthy gut to eat lectins. So that's one aspect. Now, if you're eating lectins and you have a DNA sensitivity, you're downgrading, you know, backing on the fat, your brain doesn't work very well, and you're told this is normal. It ain't normal. We have to fix these destroyers so we can have the V8 supercar. So let's have a look at gluten. So gluten's a double whammy because it's also got lectins in it. And we're seeing that over 90% have a sensitivity to lectins. So celiac is here. So celiac gut, celiac skin, celiac brain. So you probably only heard of the celiac gut. But when the medical system tests you for celiac disease, my friends, they only test you for gliadin alpha and trans-glutamate 2 in the gut, and they forget everything else. So imagine if you've got the skin one and the brain one. So that's going to destroy your thyroid and also your brain and central nervous system. But you could have all of these ones here, and that's also going to cause gluten sensitivity. And just to show you how critical it is to figure this out, this is Dr. Daddis speaking to it. Check this out.
Now, another mechanism of how gluten sensitivity impacts the brain is that gluten impacts the brain and causes inflammation. So that first image I showed you, where immune cells in the gut also communicate with the immune cells in the brain, is really important. So inflammation in the gut activates gut immune cells. Those gut immune cells send messenger proteins to cells in the brain called neuroglia. Those neuroglia get activated, and then the brain gets inflamed. And when the brain gets inflamed, nerve conduction, synapses slow down. Inflammation in the brain slows down synapses, and patients just can't think, they can't focus, they can't get their thought process going on. So those are the things that happen with it. So basically, some people that have immune reactions to gluten, they get severe brain inflammation when they eat it. They can even have their blood-brain barrier, gut barrier breakdown. They can set up the stage for neurological autoimmunity. They can decrease blood flow to their brain. As their brain gets inflamed, their messenger synaptic pathways become slower, and they just don't function well. And they walk in the healthcare system and they get diagnosed with chronic depressive disorder or chronic anxiety disorder.
So they're getting misdiagnosed in the medical system because you can see, as I've mentioned on this video here, it can cause psychological stress and pathological conditions and disease states. So destroying the brain, the thyroid, disease states, autoimmune disease is what is triggered by gluten there. So like this is a standard report for gluten sensitivity. You can see this person's got quite a lot. And this is pretty typical what we see. There's very few people that we've tested that can have gluten. And another problem with lectins is this: they inhibit myelination, the growth factor for myelination there. So all of your nerves in your brain, your central nervous system are coated with this myelin sheath. So you've got good conduction impulses, and lectins and gluten damage it, and they also inhibit it from regrowing it. So multiple sclerosis can occur, ALS, and, you know, sciatica, pins and needles and things like that with the old lectins. So pretty serious stuff. And this book here from Dr. Daddis is a great book you can pick up and have a look at the list there. Pause that, go over that. Psychiatric disorders, movement disorders, sensory disorders, myopathy, ataxia, cognitive impairment, dementia, restless leg. You get the idea. It's not helpful at all. And another special mention goes to nightshades. So I'm sensitive to the old nightshades here, and about 25% of the people that we test are. And they destroy your gut. And as you'll soon learn, the gut is foundational for all health. If your gut is sick, you won't have good thyroid hormone. So we have to fix the gut too, and that's why it's in this one here. Now let's move away from DNA sensitivities, which you can't change, to food sensitivities, which you can change. However, you have to heal the gut first. So let's talk about it. Now, this food sensitivities is different than food allergies. Food allergies can be life-threatening, and you'd know if you had a food allergy, like a peanut allergy. So that's an IgE test, right? So this is your immune system, and 90% of your immune system is in your gut. It's huge. Now, if you've got a food sensitivity, it's a delayed inflammatory response, and you can test for this. And generally, the good test to get is IgG, IgA. IgA is the gut immune system, 90%. Then IgE is in the blood. All right. So they're the two tests that you can get. Now, what's really interesting about this, as I learned from functional doctors, is that a lot of times people are just so sick for so long, they've got brain fog, they just don't feel very good. And then they're sick of the medical system. Like, I'm done with this shit. Like, it's not working. So they learn about functional medicine. And this is just one example. I'll give you another one in a moment. So they tested his genetics, they tested his food sensitivities, and they found that he had a lot of food inappropriate immune response food sensitivities. And I'll show you how this plays out in a moment. But he's tested positive to food sensitivity reactions to eggs, rice, wheat, black beans, chocolate, chia, beets, artichoke, carrots, cauliflower, broccoli, garlic, onions, potato, sweet potato, tomatoes, avocado, blueberry, lemon, lime, orange, juice, lamb, and parsley. And he could only eat for the next 6 months chicken, beef, and bell peppers. But when he got through that, he was fine. He was like, thank God, I'm cured. So this is what can happen. Now let's talk about how these inappropriate immune sensitivities occur, not to be mistaken with DNA, which you can't change. So what happens is when your gut's not working too well, these tight junctions open up and food particles that haven't been digested properly, if you're stress eating, you're emotionally eating, or you're having alcohol, these food particles go into systemic circulation. And then the next thing that happens, you've got these specialized cells called macrophages, and they say, should this be in the blood? And because it's a food particle that shouldn't be there, it's called an antigen. And then these memory cells that remember that that food is an issue launches this cascade, activates mast cells, histamine, everything comes down, inflammation goes, your brain doesn't work very well. And remember, it's got a delayed onset. So it's very low grade inflammation. And the system says, you're just aging. This is a normal part of aging. It's not normal. If we fix these issues, the food inappropriate immune food sensitivities, which you can test for, if you want to know more information about that, just drop a comment below. And then you've got the DNA ones too, which you can't change. But once you know this information, you'll know exactly what foods harm you, and you take them off the breakfast, lunch, and dinner table, and then you'll know what foods heal you and help you grow and thrive and get back into your prime to increase your earning potential and to build a legacy for you and your family. Like, it's just huge. So that's the difference between the two. Now, when it comes to the gut, everyone's uniquely different, and we generally do a GI map test. And this is a protocol to heal dude number one's gut. So you can see it's quite extensive. So this is pretty significant. And this person wasn't too bad, and they only needed to do these steps there. So all uniquely different. If you want to know more information about that, drop a comment below and I'll do another video all about gut health. So here's a typical lab that we see back when it comes to thyroid antibodies. So you can see here, thyroid peroxidase and thyroid globulins. So really high there. Like if it's over 1,000, that's pretty bad. So this person here, when we first started working with them, they're about 700. About 3 months later, they came down to about there. So here's the problem with the medical system. They won't even test for these. Right? They won't even test, and your thyroid is being destroyed and you feel like shit. So you want to be on top of this and get this tested straight away. Now, one of the people that we work with, Dr. Jim Myers, which is a functional nutritionist, check out this.
The elevations in the thyroid antibodies there. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, they're actually a little lower than they were the last time. And have you been pretty strict on the gluten-free part of the diet, or?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the number one cause of that in America, at least, is gluten intolerance. So they've actually come down a little bit since the last lab work that you had. Those thyroid antibodies can be coming down, and especially if they're gluten generated, for up to a year and a half. So the fact that they haven't gone up and they're still coming down that's a good sign.
Okay.
Total testosterone now is at a high level. Free testosterone is kind of in the middle.
That's a gentleman that we're working with, and we also go through these functional doctors and nutritionists, and we're moving everything in the right direction. So as you can see there, the medical system, they don't test it all. As I mentioned there, instead of doing 9 thyroid labs, they'll do 1, maybe 2, and you got only part of the information there. And they don't test for these antibodies, which are destroying your thyroid tissue. Now let's just talk about a bit more about the gut there. So here's the causes of gut permeability, or a lot of people call it leaky gut there. So your diet, all this shit here, medications can cause it, infections, stress. So when you're stressed out all the time, it destroys your gut. You got hormonal imbalances like thyroid and testosterone and estrogen, or you got brain trauma or inflammation, autoimmune disease like the thyroid tissue, and glycosylated end products. So these are called AGEs. Now, AGEs will destroy your gut, but also they'll age you faster. So advanced glycation end products, known as AGEs, aging you faster. And this is serious because it's causative. It's causative. When scientists say something is causative, that's a pretty big deal. And these AGEs alone can destroy your gut, your thyroid, and many degenerative diseases like heart disease, Alzheimer's, diabetic, insulin resistance, kidney disease, wrinkles, loss of skin elasticity, infertility. So as you can see here, these AGEs age you faster. You look older, you feel like a lazy loser. So these AGEs, they cause drooping of the eyelids, the crow's nest, the dark wrinkles under the eyes, the discoloration of the skin. These crow's feet, they come up even more, and your skin starts to sag down. You get the big jowls hanging down, and you can walk that back and reverse it. I've done a video all about this too. So huge, and we'll talk about that on the second video there. And here's the 3 big causes of AGE. So when you got dysregulations in insulin and glucose, it's in our food supply, big food, big pharma, big food. It's in their food supply. And if you got too much ferritin there, that's going to cause these AGEs as well. Now, this is why we say that the gut is foundational. Because your gut has a brain, it's called an enteric nervous system, around about 600 million neurons. And look at the organ systems that it's speaking to, including the thyroid hormone there. It's just not listed here. But the brain, stress, anxiety, depression, IBS, schizophrenia, cognitive decline, autism, brain fog, and hormones, the endocrine axis. So all your hormones are disrupted when you got a sick gut. And then the heart, cardiovascular disease, atherosclerosis, thrombosis, which is thick, sludgy blood, which leads to hypertension and high blood pressure, lungs, so you get asthma, allergies, wheezing, seasonal allergies, the liver, which is huge, like the liver detoxes chemicals, pollutants, it keeps estrogen at healthy levels, absolutely foundational. The pancreas, type 1, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance. The bones can demineralize, osteoporosis. The muscles, so a lot of dudes are at the gym pushing the weights and they can't pack on the muscle because maybe they've got a sick gut. However, as you age, like 50 and 60, sarcopenia sets in and you get frail and you're around these fucking old walking, these things you see people walking around with. And again, of course, the skin. So acne, cirrhosis, atopic dermatitis, wrinkles and advanced skin aging, and also alopecia, hair loss, and the reproductive axis. So the testes and also the ovaries for ladies, the kidney, the gallbladder, and of course, the thyroid gland itself. So, as I mentioned there, we have to do better. Two big problems. The medical system doesn't test all the right labs, right? And here's just a classic example. They're testing generally 1, which is just TSH, thyroid stimulating, when we need to do 9 to have a full picture. And again, we've got 6 functional patterns, which are harder to fix, and 22 metabolic patterns, which is simple to fix. And of course, we've got the chemicals that we're exposed to all the time and heavy metals. They're going to destroy the thyroid tissue as well. Lots of research behind that. And there's so many of them, it's not even funny. And on the next video, you'll see that they also disrupt your thyroid. They're estrogenic, so they mimic estrogen, and they're anti-androgenic, so they tank your testosterone. They even destroy testosterone and thyroid receptors. And these endocrine disrupting chemicals, they're cytotoxic, genotoxic, reproductive toxicity, neurotoxicity. Damn, that's a lot. So the way that we do this is the way that I've been taught to do this with functional medicine is you look at the exposome, which is your history and your blood labs and the right blood labs, your genome, so your DNA food sensitivities, your microbiome to fix your gut, and also the immune system, inappropriate food sensitivities. And that gives you a clear path, time-bound, back to health. So if you want to have a conversation with me about how we can help you, information below, just reach out, contact me, and we can jump on a call and I'll show you what we can do for you and get you back to health. So you don't have to think about it. We'll just show you exactly what to do with certainty. So basically, on the next video, we're going to start to talk about the disruptors. So there's a lot of things that can disrupt the thyroid gland there, and we'll talk about that on the next call, because you want to get serious about this, because this is what I call 1 millimeter shifts. So getting the thyroid optimal, the gut optimal, knowing what foods you're sensitive to, whether that's an inappropriate immune response or a set in stone DNA food sensitivity. When you know what they are, you take them off and you start to thrive. Because a lot of people, they're declining. They're declining as they age and they're doing nothing about it. They've got their head buried in the sand. Be proactive. Be serious about this. Because when I spoke to Dr. Ken Berry, he said this to me and it really shook me to the core. So I'll play the video and listen to Dr. Ken. Take this seriously.
Absolutely. It's often too late by the time you've become financially comfortable.
Yeah.
Very often you've done so much damage to every tiny artery in your body.
Yeah.
That you're now stuck with permanent erectile dysfunction or permanent forgetfulness or permanent insomnia, permanent shortness of breath, chest pain, right? Gut issues. You've done so much damage. Some of it can't be taken back. And that's why I'm so active on social media, constantly reaching out and trying to help people, because once it's too late, you might regain a little bit of that function, but it's never going to be like it once was. And it's never going to be like it could have been. Yeah, and that's very sad if you think about it, that somebody's basically handicapped for the rest of their life, physically or mentally or emotionally, because of bad dietary decisions that they made for the first few decades of their life that they didn't realize were bad decisions because they had never been trained properly.
And that's exactly what I'm trying to do here today, is to train and coach you the right method. And the right method is basically what I've shown you there. And what we're going to do on the next video, we're going to look at the thyroid disruptors. So if you want any more information, drop a comment below, reach out to me. More than happy to jump on a call and have a conversation with you, because as you can now see, the old thyroid hormone is the key hormone for everything. We've got to get in the butter zone. And we don't want this tissue destruction of the thyroid, the pancreas, the brain, central nervous tissue. We want to be optimal, and that's the point. And the old medical system as it stands, they're never going to do that, unfortunately. So we've got to work with the right professionals that know how to fix this problem, because they just see in two colors. You're healthy, but you got all these symptoms, and then they'll prescribe you drugs, and then you feel stuck. So don't be stuck. Don't spin your wheels. Fix this problem, because you can, and it's worth it.